Hi everyone, it's Dr. Laura Foster here. So welcome to the webinar. I see that there's a few of you on board here. I'm just going to give a couple seconds. If somebody just wants to type that they can see and hear me, that would be great because that's always a good one. Nothing like chatting when no one's there. Hold on. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm excited to chat tonight because there is a lot of information that I can share with you that I think is going to make a positive impact in your lifestyle. And I just want to give you some background. Most of you I know, but I know there's some people that are coming into the webinar from the States and some people that I've met online that don't come into my clinic. So I just want to do a quick introduction so you're a little bit more familiar with who I am and what I'm about. My name is Dr. Laura Foster, and I have been a chiropractor for 20 years now. I actually can say that I just had my 20th anniversary on Tuesday, so I was pretty excited about that. Working with practice members and clients is my absolute favorite thing to do. I am completely driven by it and I love it. And as much as I'm a chiropractor, a big part of being a chiropractor is, of course, educating about a healthy lifestyle. And how can you ever talk about that without addressing what we put into our mouths, the food that we drink, the food that we eat, and the beverages that we drink, and how it's impacting our body. And for me as a chiropractor, how it's impacting your nervous system. So sugar is something to me, or really the intake of sugar is something that just started to grow in my awareness as the years went by. I'm always trying to leverage people's health by giving them more information about what they can be doing, and what's the fastest or the easiest or the simplest or the most effective way to really leverage your health and get the results you're looking for. I have run other sugar detoxes, and I've been super excited about the results that people are getting. So sugar is something that I've just noticed is a real powerful and controlling force in a lot of people's diets. The one thing I'll always get from people is they will say to me, well, you know, I don't really eat sugar. I don't eat baked goods, and I don't eat all that stuff. And it's like, oh, I totally get it. But you're going to learn today that, you know, the candies and the cookies and all that, that's a big part of it for some people, but I think it's the hidden sugars that are really creating the most sabotage. So as we go through, you may notice that there's some places in your own diet where you are getting more sugar than you were aware of. So hopefully there will be some take-homes for you. Let's back up to go forward, which is, I want to talk to you a little bit about how big of an issue this is. The average Canadian, and more so in other parts of the world, and especially to my American viewers, is consuming 110 grams of sugar per day. Teenage boys are topping the list. They are, it kind of varies in the stats that you read. It's between 138 and 172 grams of sugar a day, which, to give you some sense of that, that's 41 teaspoons. 21% of our daily calories is coming in the form of sugar. And it's huge. The number one place where it's coming in is it is coming through our beverages. So we are actually drinking in sugar far more than we realize. And I think that's one of the hidden forms. The second way that it's coming into our diet, the second largest way, is actually through fruit. And I have a whole topic on fruit. We will talk about that. Grains, another place where a lot of people don't realize they're consuming so much actual sugar intake. And then, of course, the confectionaries and things like that, the added sugar, the obvious forms of sugar. That's how we tend to be getting the most sugar in our diet. Here's the thing that's happened, and I don't know if you've noticed this lately, but a lot of people sent me this study, that there's a lot of conversation about the fact that people are waking up to the idea that it is not really fat that is making people fat and contributing so much to heart disease as it is sugar. So I guess what happened is, back in the 1950s, there was a giant study that was fraudulently represented. And this study had such an impact in reconfiguring ways that people looked at fat. It started the whole low-fat craze. And it was, like I said, it was fraudulent, and now we're talking about it now. But in the meantime, I've lived through, and most of you have lived through, this huge low-fat craze. So we were thinking that fat was always the issue. And believe me, we're going to talk a little bit about what's a healthy fat and what's not a healthy fat. But this whole idea that we should be eating low fat has meant that we've removed the fat from the diet, but our cardiovascular rates and our cancer rates and our heart disease and our stroke and all of these different things keep going up and up and up. It's not making a difference, or it's not making a substantial difference. But whenever we have decreased the amount of sugar in a food, what food manufacturers have done is they've substituted it with sugar. There's a couple of reasons why they've done that. One is fat is very satisfying in our diet. It's very healthy in some forms, in some ways, but it's also very satisfying. So when we take out fat in an item, all of a sudden the food doesn't have the same addiction or the craving for the consumer. Food manufacturers know this. So the way they got around this is they started to increase the amount of sugar in our actual diet. That did a couple things. Not only did it make it in some ways more satisfying, but it also very much increases the addictive content of the food. So there's actually, food manufacturers are aware of this. They know that sugar is incredibly addictive. I've certainly read in many cases that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. I can tell you just from watching people go through a sugar detox that there's a couple days in the beginning where people are just so acutely aware of how much they crave sugar. And there's a reason for that. When you consume sugar, hidden or otherwise, it starts to create a level of addiction and a hardwiring for that addiction in your brain and in your body. And as a result of that, your body just starts craving it and craving it and craving it. The more that you start to pull away initially, the more your body wants to crave that. And so we start jonesying for sugar. And there's a couple reasons why. We'll talk about that when we talk about fructose. But the highly addictive nature of sugar is the reason that we go towards it. It's also the reason that food manufacturers are putting it in foods that never had sugar in the past. So the way our parents were raised, the way food was made and manufactured 20, even 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, not even the same topic at all whatsoever. Now we have sugar that was never found in other things, everything from toothpaste to high amounts in bread and in pretty much everything else you can imagine. It increases sales. It's not good for you, and it's certainly great for them. So as we go through and we start talking about the forms of sugar that are most common in the foods that we're taking in, we'll talk about beverages a bit. So the thing with beverages is that, well, let me just say, a juice box, an unsweetened juice box of fruit juice that people are sending, 25 grams of sugar in there, which I'm pretty sure most people aren't aware of. 32 ounces of Gatorade, which I see people with all the time, has in the neighborhood of 14 teaspoons of sugar. We'll also talk a bit about how much sugar I think that you should be consuming and it's recommended. So what is sugar doing to us? You know that it is more about the sugar content that we're taking in that's making us fat and contributing to our cardiovascular disease. It is aging us at an unprecedented rate. It is ruining our liver function. It is increasing incidence of insulin dependence, of course, diabetes. It's making us depressed. It's horribly affecting our moods. It is affecting our digestion. It is burning out our adrenal glands, you name it. It is also wreaking havoc on our hormones. Oh, I just want to show you. I made notes today because you might be aware of this, but I have a small tendency from time to time to go off track. And I want to give you all the tips plus some today. So you might see me flipping through there. All right. So the biggest thing with that is there's such a long laundry list of things that sugar is contributing to. The biggest thing that I would say is it is ruining our life experience in terms of our health. It's very difficult when you think you're making good choices and you are unknowingly consuming larger amounts of sugar than you're aware of. It's not getting you the results you're looking for. And I understand your frustration. I really do. So as we go through this and you start to hear some tips and so on, jot them down. If you have any questions, feel free to put them to comment on the sidebar. I'll try to get to them as much as I can. If I don't get to them in the webinar, then I will certainly get to them later. I will email them out and I will put them on the page that you're going to get emailed. All right, we'll go from there. The other thing I'm going to say is I have just spent a massive amount of time improving my internet connection. So I don't think I'm going to have an issue. But you should close all the other browser windows that you have going on, possibly in the background, to improve your experience of listening to the webinar. If you get frustrated, if for some reason your service is different at your house and I am pixelating or you're having problems, and you have to get off because it's frustrating you, just get off. When you will get sent this webinar later, and I assure you that all of those issues won't be on the actual taped one that you get, okay? So I'm just gonna say that, don't get frustrated if there's something going on at your house or you have a connectivity issue, okay? All right, let's get started. The first thing I need you to know is we need to be realistic about what we're taking in. And in order to be realistic, then I think it's important that we understand how to decipher the information, which might sound elementary to a lot of people, but you need to know your labels. Every label in North America, or every item that is in a package, comes with a nutrition fact label. And you'll see it on the back of every single package that you have. I blew one up, not literally blew one up. I blew one up so that you could see what I'm talking about. So this is a nutrition fact sheet. There's two things that I'm going to draw your attention to. One is that it always talks in terms of a serving size, which is really an important component. So this one, which I don't even know what this was taken from, says the serving size is 1 container, which is 8 fluid ounces. That's something to be aware of, because it's possible that when you look at what the nutrition fact sheet is talking about, they may be talking about only a portion of what you might actually have consumed. So for example, if this said half a container and this was all the specs on that and you ate double that, then you would need to know that you need to double all these numbers down here, okay? So the other thing I want to bring your attention to is if you go under carbohydrates or total carb, you'll see that it lists sugar. And in this case, whatever this product was, is 17 grams. So if you were to have this entire container, you would be consuming 17 grams of sugar. If you consume 2 containers, or if the serving size was something less than 1 container, then you would need to multiply this number by whatever it is that you consumed, okay? So sounds easy enough, I get that, but this is just such a big component of understanding what you're consuming. So what does 17 grams mean? This is the other thing. I don't think grams mean a lot to people, so I'm going to translate it for you. If you have a pen and paper, this is what I would want you to write down, that 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon of sugar. So a regular teaspoon that you would have, I don't know, cereal from, that is 1 gram. So in this case, this is 17 grams of sugar. If I was to have this entire container, dividing that by 4, it'd be roughly over 4 teaspoons of sugar, okay? That's the first thing. The other thing is underneath every single nutrition fact sheet is also the ingredient list. So when you look on anything, and these are peppermint seeds, peppermint, I have peppermint in the background, pumpkin seeds, you'll see that it lists the ingredients. The first ingredient that they list, and I have done the same with an ingredient list, the first ingredient that they list is the one that's in the highest volume. So as you go down, it'll go from the most to the least amount inside the container. So you need to understand, or it's helpful to understand, what it is that you're consuming by way of what are actual sugars. There are so many names for sugars. There's the obvious, which is glucose, which is table sugar. And then there's many, and I just pulled this out of the last detox. There's many other names for it. So there's the obvious ones. Sugars have a tendency to always end in the actual OSE at the end. So sucrose, glucose, fructose, mannose, galactose, you name it, those are the sugars. But you'll also see it written a lot, high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS. Other things that are also forms of sugar, of course, are everything from maple syrup to molasses to raw sugar to barley malt to brown rice syrup, blah, 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 blah. So being familiar and being aware with all the different names of sugar is important. When you pick up an ingredient label and you can't pronounce anything on it, that's a good sign that probably you shouldn't be eating it. That's just a general nutrition fact. The fewer the ingredients, the better, of course, because it's more in its real and full state, and the higher the vitality. So if you are consuming an item that never really expires, then you can be sure that it's not going to have the same vibrant effect in the body. So the thing to look for is to know what your serving size is, know how many grams of sugar in there, and of course know that 4 grams is 1 teaspoon of sugar. So Where do your sugar sources come from? The obvious. You know, we get a lot of sugar from the obvious stuff like cakes and cookies and candies and things like that. We already talked about beverages, and we're going to get into that more in detail. Beverages are huge. So water, can I just state the obvious? Water is really what your body needs. Everything runs on water in your body, and you should be consuming a minimum of 2 to 3 liters a day. Oftentimes when you feel hungry, what's really happening is you are thirsty. So ideally, you are consuming your water outside of your meals so that you are not diluting your digestive enzymes. So keeping your water intake up will go a long ways for you to avoid really snacking and consuming things when you're not actually really that hungry. So if you are not consuming water, what can you be consuming? Well, go back to the labels, because there's a few things that really surprise people. I notice that a lot of people talk about juice, and there's good reason why people think having a lot of fruit juice is helpful, or that starting your day off with fruit juice is a great way to start your day. What I'm going to say is one of the biggest ways that you can shut down your sugar intake is to stop having fruit juice. So something like this, which is Happy Planet 100% orange juice, which is great. You look at the actual ingredient list, it says one thing, orange juice. This tiny little container right here has 27 grams of sugar. Here's how many grams of sugar I want you to have in a day. Are you ready for this? Write it down. 40. That's how many grams of sugar a day you're going to consume to cut the addiction. I consume under 50 grams of sugar a day, every day, all day. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not superhuman. I'm not Jen Pike when it comes to this stuff. I'm Laura Foster, and I can very much get addicted to sugar just like anybody else. And I'll tell you that it's easy to eat in the way that I'm going to be discussing and keeping it under. So if, say you were trying to consume 40, maybe maximum 50 grams of sugar a day, and you start off by giving yourself a whopping 27 grams of sugar, really super hard to keep it under control. Okay, so fruit juice is a big one. So then I picked this up. This is like organic, which is great, right? Organic iced green tea beverage. It's peach, and it's made with organic green tea extract, and it's lightly sweetened, and I got it at the health food store, so how bad could this be? This container alone has 20 grams of sugar, which is 5 teaspoons. Coconut water, and I'm only giving you these examples because if I say to you, you know, you shouldn't have a can of Coke, everyone's gonna go, yeah, no kidding. Well, a can of Coke obviously has a lot of sugar in it. It has 39 grams to be exact, but there's a lot of sugar in a lot of the other things that you're consuming. In fact, if I said to you, can of Coke, vitamin water, Arizona iced tea, and what else? Unsweetened apple juice. What would be the thing in those 4 that would have the most sugar? It would be the apple juice and the Arizona iced tea. The apple juice probably would have somewhere in the neighborhood, I don't remember it right off the bat, 60 grams of sugar. The Arizona iced tea, ready? I saw one that had 72 grams of sugar, but I had them displayed in my office, and they're roughly 56. Not that I am advocating Coca-Cola, but a can of Coke has 39 grams of sugar in that. There's all sorts of other reasons why you're not going to have a can of Coke, but that just gives you an example. Because I know that when you say, oh, kids shouldn't have a can of Coke, but we think nothing of giving them several glasses of unsweetened apple juice or whatnot in a day, and it is significantly increasing the amount of sugar that's in their diet, and it is making them crave all the other forms of sugar as well. Coconut water. Coconut water, I know it's great from the perspective that there are minerals in it, and it's very hydrating and so on. However, I have to tell you, I can't find a coconut water that I recommend with respect to the amount of sugar in it. This one alone has 20 grams of sugar. So that's a no for me. Now, kombucha. Kombucha is a really super healthy drink, sorta. You know, if you make kombucha, you can make it incredibly healthy. But if you're buying kombucha, you need to be careful. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll just say kombucha is a fermented drink. It has tea bags in it as a base typically. And it has a plethora of probiotics, which helps with your gut biosis and digestion and so on. This is a brand that I recommend, GT's and Synergy. It's made by the same company. I really like them, but they're not all equal, so you need to be savvy. This one is Third Eye Chai, and this entire one has 4 grams. It also hardly has any calories, which is one thing we always focus on. This actual label here talks about what's in half a bottle, but who drinks a half a bottle? Well, some of you might. I drink a whole bottle. So there's only 60 actual calories in here, but more importantly, there's only 4 grams of sugar, which is great. Now, this other one by the same company, by the way, is Mango. Delicious. This one has 20 grams of sugar. So same company, not always the same amount. So when you're used to just reaching for an item in the grocery store, be aware that you actually have to read the ingredients, and you have to read the labels quite often. Alcohol has a ton of sugar. We talk about in the detox about, where alcohol can, if you choose to drink alcohol, can fit into a low sugar lifestyle. But a lot of the things that people are consuming is definitely extremely high in sugar. You can be assured, of course, that if it has fruit juice in it, or you're consuming it with pop or soda, of course, there's going to be a really, really super high sugar content in it. And if you are mixing something in a blender, probably going to be very high. If you're mixing something with soda water or mineral water or something like that, probably going to be a lot lower. So, alcohol is a big portion of it. Sauces, condiments, those kinds of things, huge hidden source. 3 tablespoons of barbecue sauce, typically, in most of them, has about 2 tablespoons of sugar in it. 2 tablespoons of sugar in 3 teaspoons of it. Same thing with most ketchups, relishes, things like that. Mustards and stuff like that. Hot sauces, not typically a big deal, but you're going to get a lot. So you need to really look at a lot of your sauces, condiments. Tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, huge, huge source of sugar for a lot of people. All right, grains and breads. We'll talk a little bit more about grains and breads, but that is also one of the areas where there is a significant amount of sugar in it, and it turns into sugar quite quickly. So it'll break down, and we call that a glycemic load, and turn into sugar rapidly in your body. There are reasons why, other health reasons why we have a tendency to decrease the actual amounts of grains and breads in our diet. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but we don't have the room in the space in this actual webinar to be getting fully into that. Added sugars, and then there's fruit. Fruit. Okay, so this would be the part where I say, yeah, but fruit's natural. You're right, fruit is natural. And I don't want to get in trouble by the, pull an Oprah and get in trouble by the fruit industry, so I just will say this. Fruit, of course, is natural, and I love it when you have organic fruit because, of course, you're also consuming fruit that doesn't have added pesticides and things like that. However, sugar is sugar from the perspective that when you are consuming fruit, it is still increasing the load on your body. Now, fruit has vitamins, fruit has minerals, of course, and also it has fiber. So there are reasons why you're going to have fruit, and I advocate having fruit. I just want you to be aware of what kind of fruit that you're intaking, so that we can choose fruits that are actually more in alignment with how you want to eat. And what do I mean by that? So although fructose, well, let me back up first. I'm going to talk about fructose. The reason I put the word fructose and fruit in the same sentence is there are various forms of sugar in the human body. Or in our diet, rather, would be a better way to say that. Glucose is like table sugar. It is the form that gets broken down in the body when we consume sugar and we consume carbohydrates and so on. And it is the kind that our body knows what to do with. Now, you can certainly overconsume glucose, so I don't want you to think that it's fine to have table sugar. But glucose and fructose are metabolized and broken down in the body in completely different ways. Glucose is what we most normally take in, and it's what's normally broken down. That's what is consumed in our body, and it is metabolized in a way where it is put into our bloodstream as a result of insulin being secreted from our pancreas, being in the presence of the sugar, uptaking it into our cells for our cells to utilize. That's the normal method by which we break down sugar. Fructose doesn't work that way. Fructose, which is mainly found in fruit, and the other form in the body is high fructose corn syrup, or rather in our food supply. High fructose corn syrup, first of all, is genetically modified almost all of the time. But the other side of it is high fructose corn syrup is found in crappy food. It is found in a lot of packaged foods. It is found in a lot of foods in North America that they don't allow in other parts of the world. So be very, very aware that high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS as it's sometimes listed, is one of those things that's really high as well in fructose. So the fact that fructose doesn't metabolize in the body in the same way that other forms of sugar is the important part. We consume more fructose in our diet through the high fructose corn syrup, and also through our fruit craze, that we are overloading our liver. That is where it becomes metabolized, unlike other forms of sugar. Because it is metabolized in the liver and we are consuming more than our bodies can generally handle, it is overloading the functioning of our liver. And as a result of that, when there's an excess of fructose in our diet, it then gets broken down and stored as fat, typically around the liver, and it also significantly increases the level of triglycerides in our body. Now, triglycerides, if you're aware, is the form of fat that everybody gets concerned with, because it's the one that has a negative effect on our body in terms of cholesterol levels. So cholesterol, just so you know, is actually important. We need cholesterol in our body. It is in some ways healthy, especially if you're talking about the right kinds of cholesterol. You need it for your hormones. It's just that important. And the fact that we're doing statin drugs and we are constantly trying to decrease our fat, it is creating problems with dementia and other forms of illness and chronic disease that we just never saw before this ever happened. When we start to have too much fructose and we start to metabolize it too much in the liver, we also start to take away from the functioning of the liver. And the liver is really important in detoxifying. So when it's overloaded by fructose, it can't detoxify properly, and that's also an issue. So as a result of this, as we start to increase our triglycerides and we start to increase the fat storage around the liver, it contributes to two things. One is it contributes to insulin resistance, otherwise known as metabolic syndrome, and contributing significantly to the ever-increasing rise of diabetes. The other side of it is that it's creating non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I have seen a ridiculous number of practice members who are actually stressed by that they're seeing that a lot in their results, that their liver function is starting to decrease. They think they're making healthy choices, or maybe they don't recognize, and they just keep trying to decrease their overall fat intake. And it's not the fat that's the problem, it's the fructose and the sugar intake. So this is one of those things to be really aware of. The other thing that happens is normally when we take glucose into our body, it stimulates the pancreas, like I said. We start to increase the insulin, and we start to pull it into our cells. But what also happens is it also typically will increase a hormone called leptin in the body. When we increase the hormone leptin, which is what happens when we take in glucose, our brain says, hey, stop eating, we're full. That doesn't happen when you take fructose. We don't get an increase in leptin, and we never get the message that we should stop eating because we're full. The other thing that happens is fructose also increases another hormone called ghrelin. And when we increase ghrelin in our body, it makes us more hungry. Double whammy, that's the problem, is it's making us more hungry, and we're never recognizing that we're full. So we're consuming and we're consuming and we're consuming. Huge problem. So fructose is important, and fruit intake is important. And more importantly, high fructose corn syrup is important. So fructose comes in the form of fruit, just like I said. High fructose corn syrup, just like I said, it also comes in the form of fruit juice. Think of fruit juice as being multiple pieces of fruit. So, I mean, that's obvious, but the thing is, a lot of us are juicing and so on, but if you've ever tried to make an entire glass of apple juice, how many apples do you have to use? It is a tremendous amount. 1 cup of apples is 11 grams of sugar. Well, I don't know about you, but it takes about 4 or 5 apples before you can get a really much juice from it. So having that sort of recognition of how many grams of sugar is coming from your fat is important. The best fruit in terms of trying to adopt a more low sugar strategy are things like avocado, which, you know, I know we never think of that as fruit, but of course it is. 1 cup of avocado is 1.5 grams of fat. Negligible, but also avocado is super healthy for you. It is one of those awesome fats that you want to have in your diet. Raspberries, 1 cup of raspberries, 4 grams of sugar. 1 cup of strawberries is 7 grams of sugar, and 1 cup of blackberries is 7 grams of sugar, as opposed to a cup of blueberries, which is 15, a cup of grapes, which is 20 grams. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I've sat there and like consumed an entire bag. A cup of oranges actually is 23 grams of sugar, and so on. So when you're thinking about what are my strategies to overall start to decrease this, then maybe you start thinking about your actual berries. For example, I'll make a smoothie in the morning, and I have a tendency these days to use blackberries or raspberries or strawberries. That's the other one. So I'll keep frozen fruit in my freezer, and I'll use half a cup or so. That might only contribute 2 to 3 grams or maybe 4 grams of sugar to my overall smoothie, which is so different than putting blueberries. Now, can you ever have blueberries? Of course you can have blueberries, but it's all about give and take in a day. So if you, like I said, if you think that you're making a good choice and you're having juice, and then maybe you're having, you know, some blueberries, and then you're having something else, and then you're having something else, also when you start adding up these numbers, you know, you're having a mango kombucha, and also you're going like, I'm having 150 grams of sugar in a day. Whereas some of these small substitutions can start to decrease it dramatically. Here's a big eye opener. A cup of medjool dates, 93 grams of sugar, which is 23 teaspoons of sugar. Now, would you ever eat a medjool date? Yes, but you know, for us healthy kind of faddish people, I said fad, by the way, we use dates a lot. There's a lot of dates used in natural cooking. 2 things. 1 is it's fructose. So there we go back to metabolizing it in our liver. And 2 is it's 93 grams of sugar, which of course is huge. Dried fruit in general has 58 grams of sugar. And then back into the juices. A cup of unsweetened apple juice or unsweetened orange juice, you're back up to 40 grams. Grape juice is 60 grams. And that can of Coke that we talked about is 39. So I'm spending so much time on this because it's big. And I would say if you do any sort of Tim Hortons, Frappuccino, or any of those drinks, or you go to Starbucks and you have any of those drinks, you will be absolutely blown away. I'm talking 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 grams of sugar. So you might not be consuming that, but have you looked at your teenage kids? Because they go there in the droves. And that's why kids are getting 150, 160, 170 grams of sugar in a day. The other thing is, sugar in most cases are fairly empty calories. And when you're consuming that, it's one of those swap things. It's what you're not getting because you're consuming so much of that, okay? The other thing is, whether it's from honey or from maple syrup or any of those things, those forms of sugar is still going to contribute to the addiction. It's still going to cause you to want to have ongoing. All right, enough of that. Here's how you get around a lot of this as well, is I'm going to encourage you to make your own food. I know that sounds just so ridiculous to say that, but one of the ways that you can really just be sure of what you're consuming is by being the person who's actually preparing it. So maybe at first you'll feel like you're constantly picking up the actual ingredient list, and you're like trying to familiarize yourself, and it's annoying in the beginning. It's like you feel like you're like learning a new language. But as you get going and you start to make your meals, you start to become more efficient at it. And I think that's really a big part of the detox, is like giving you strategies constantly to keep trying to increase it and make it easier for you. Some of my top tips for that is, 1, make your own food. That helps. The other thing is, start thinking about efficiency cooking. So things don't need to be complicated if you're trying to stay away from sugar. All of your animal proteins, whether you're having chicken breast or you're having wild fish, or you're having, lean ground beef that is made from appropriately raised beef and so on, those don't have sugar in it. Vegetables, minimal natural sugars in it. There's only 2 vegetables that I'm going to tell you, and I bet you know what they are already. Go ahead. I can hear you. Yeah, corn and potatoes. Corn and potatoes are like, I don't know what other people call this, but I call them like the non-vegetables. They're starchy, which is fine, except they really don't have the beneficial effect that the other vegetables have, which is increasing alkalinity and so on. They turn into sugar rapidly. They have a very high glycemic index, which is why they turn into sugar rapidly. They create a huge portion, or they occupy a lot of space on our plates, and it's what we're not eating as a result of eating those. So I'm going to say to you, please don't have corn and potatoes. Most corn, by the way, is generally genetically modified anyways. You pretty much can't find it. Sweet potato has a lower glycemic index than others. I say it's fine. So go ahead and consume sweet potatoes. They're very nutrient rich. I don't want you to have sweet potatoes every single day, all day, that kind of thing, but they're definitely a very healthy version. So when I say count your grams of sugar, don't get excited about having to count your vegetable grams. It's not that big of a deal. So you can have an abundance, and start looking around at the grocery store as to what you haven't been consuming. Oh, what's that weird thing over there? Oh, that's bok choy. And oh, what's that over there? Oh, that's Swiss chard. And oh, how do you make kale, and those kinds of things. So carrots, yes, carrots is another one. Yeah, carrots kind of falls in that similar idea of sweet potatoes and corn. I personally, unless you plan on having a high carrot diet or you're making carrot juice, then I would say don't worry about having some carrots. You can put carrots in your salad. You can have some carrot sticks. I just think the benefit far outweighs the negative. If you felt like you had a giant sugar addiction, then I would say, sure, go ahead, cut down on the carrots. Does that answer your question, Kevin? All right, so if you are making your own food, then you can have your animal protein. You can have massive amounts of vegetables. And so there are a multitude of ways that you can work with this. I would say bulk cook for the most part. So if you are making dinner, make enough dinner for lunch tomorrow, because lunch is when people most often have difficulty. So if you are making 2 chicken breasts, why not make 4 chicken breasts or 6 chicken breasts? You can start to plan ahead, and meal planning is one of the ways that you get around being unprepared. So the biggest thing is failing to plan is typically planning to fail. Here are the few of the things that I do constantly in my house. Especially at this time of year, I will make a giant salad at the beginning of the week in hopes that it's going to last me for 2 days. And that's 2 days of eating at dinner and probably eating it at lunch as well. When I'm making a salad, I pull out a big Tupperware container and I cut up extra of every single one of those vegetables, and I stick cut up vegetables in that container as well. If I have everything out and I'm doing it, it doesn't take that much longer to do an extra pepper or an extra thing of cucumber or whatnot. So that's one of the ways I get around it. I roast vegetables a ton. I have a convection oven. I can load the trays up in there. And I think roasted vegetables, onions and Brussels sprouts and sweet potatoes and even pieces of broccoli, you name it, carrots, turnips, parsnips. I mean, I know those are all those roasted root vegetables, but they create a depth and a taste level and more of a satisfaction than always just eating your stuff raw or steamed. So being able to put multiple levels of roasted vegetables into your oven and taking them out, putting them in a glass container and throwing them on salad the next day, or heating them up quickly in the morning with your eggs or whatnot, is one of the ways that you can start to make more efficiency in your diet. Also, I would say, also having hard-boiled eggs, especially if you're sourcing pasture-raised, or you're getting eggs from pasture-raised chickens, and you're getting high omega-3 content, then those eggs are awesome for you. They're not going to have a negative effect on your body at all. These are a few of my favorite things. Ready? I have like a bit of a show and tell here. So raw nuts and seeds. Raw nuts and seeds are an excellent thing to have. If you are really working on weight loss, be a bit careful. I mean, they're higher in calories for sure. But here's the thing. I will tell people don't count calories when you're on a detox, because even though I significantly increase your fat intake, when you drop the sugar intake down, you'll find you don't have as much problem with it, and your pounds start to melt away on their own. And it's probably also because you are now eating more whole foods and your body's working more efficiently. But I love having raw trail mix. So if you are one of those people that takes an entire bag of raw trail mix and you just consume and consume and consume, then you might want to go ahead and just pre-portion them into small containers or Ziploc bags, or I have a whole plethora of glass jars in my house. That's what I like to use, so I'll have those. So whether it's in my purse or at the clinic or whatnot, that's something that I can always have. I think I even have some in the console in my car. So these are sea salt pumpkin seeds. Really, really great thing to have. Now, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with protein bars. Most protein bars, quite honestly, are crap. You really need to read the ingredients. It's awful, like so much soy and junk, and you just read it. But I will say that if you use it as sort of a 911, like you're out, you're hungry, and you want to go have a donut, then have this. This is actually a great company. It's a Canadian company, Genuine Health. All of their stuff is non-GMO. This has 15 grams of protein, which is great. It's also gluten-free. It has 9 grams of sugar. So you'd say, oh, 9 grams is a lot. Well, 9 grams, you're right. It's not fabulous. However, this is a better option than having a bagel and cheese and donut and those kinds of things. So that's fine. This is something that you can have around, right? Cut up vegetables, of course, extra protein. I know this sounds weird, but I'll just say, you know, I've been known to open up a can of actual, you know, fish or tuna or whatnot, not every day, but I'll have this. There isn't any sugar in it, very satisfying, and in a pinch it works well for me, so I always have some of those around. Also, this one, beef jerky. So these are 2 brands I recommend, Beretta and Maclean's. Both of them, well, first of all, beef jerky is very high in protein, as you can well imagine. It's high in sodium, but again, when you're eating whole foods, you don't have to worry as much about your sodium intake because you're not getting sodium through most other things. So these 2 things, when you buy traditional or original as opposed to teriyaki, there'll be little to no sugar in it. This one has 0 sugar. This one has 1 gram of sugar per 2 pieces, 15 gram intake. So both of these are great, and a little goes a long way. And of course, they're dried, so you can keep these in your car or your handbag or whatnot. So nut and seed butter. Nut and seed butter is a big staple for me. If you source it properly, you can get almond butter and other forms of nuts and seed butters that have no sugar in them. Be careful, they're not all like that though, but there are lots that have no sugar in them, and of course they're very satisfying, and you should be able to consume those as much as possible. Smoothies. Smoothies are one of those things that I am constantly making and putting in a glass jar and taking to work or whatnot. I will often make it in the morning. I start all my smoothies, and I recommend this for everybody, is to skip the cow's milk for so many reasons, but one is that it is not great for your body, for one. The way that milk is produced is very, well, not only pasteurized, but very much processed, and it is very mucus forming and creates a lot of inflammation in the human body. Also, a lot of people are sensitive to cow's milk and they don't even recognize it. So I definitely recommend that you consume little to no cow's milk. Instead, why don't you try some of these things? So this is unsweetened almond milk. This is what I use in my smoothies. I don't ever really drink a glass of it, but you certainly could. You could have cashew milk, you could have coconut milk, you could have hemp seed milk, you could have almond milk. Go for the unsweetened. It has the same amount of calcium and whatnot as cow's milk, but it also doesn't have the sugar, so it's fantastic, okay? So if I was to have a smoothie in the morning, I would start with that as my base, or water, and I would add in a plethora of greens, which don't have any sugar in it, so I'll use kale, or I'll use spinach, or whatnot. I'll use a little bit of frozen fruit. Typically, I'll use, like I said, raspberries or strawberries or something like that. And then I put my healthy fats in it, whether it's coconut oil, or I will use flaxseed oil or hemp seed oil or something like that. And then I put all sorts of other accoutrements, which we'll get into later. But smoothies are a great way to get a great hit of protein, healthy fat, and good carbohydrate. And in that way, it's very satisfying and something you can take to work. So I use mine for around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of people use this as a meal replacement. Both are great. Yeah, Tanya, you just asked me if water is for smoothies is a great recommendation over nut milks. For sure. I mean, especially if you are wanting to decrease your caloric intake a little. I sometimes find that it tastes for me a little bit more like a chore because I like the smooth, the thickness and the smoothness that comes from using a nut milk. One of the things that you can do is you can make your own nut milk. Probably not enough time in this segment to be talking about it, but it is something that is so easy to do and so delicious. That is something that we share during the detox. And I definitely recommend that, because then you can start to control the ingredients. So whether you use water or you use some sort of unsweetened milk or nut milk, I think that's great. The other thing I would say is, cycle what you do. I mean, always doing the same thing over and over and over is something that I think is not so great for your body. It's like when you exercise your body, cross-training is everything. Always drinking the same thing, always eating the same thing, always putting the same thing into our bodies, using the same brands all the time. It creates food sensitivities and issues, and it sometimes means that we're missing some vital vitamins and nutrients in our body. So cycling it up is always great, okay? Energy bars. I tend to make my own. I also make a lot of raw energy balls, which are based mostly on seeds or also on healthy fats and a protein source and whatnot. Really, really easy, and they're just small. They're easy to take different places, and they give you a huge hit of healthy fat and very, very low sugar. So that's something you can always do, and it's great for kids. And dark chocolate. Yeah, you heard me, dark chocolate. I didn't even bring up my dark chocolate. I was going to. So for you Canadians, especially for the bulk of people here in Ontario, write this one down, although you probably already know what I'm going to say. Giddy yo-yo. Not all giddy yo-yo. It's kind of like the kombucha thing. You want to be consuming 89% dark chocolate giddy yo-yo. So I hear you. You're like, oh, yuck. Well, here, just trust me. There's only, what is it, 4 grams or something in the entire chocolate bar. I know you wouldn't have the whole chocolate bar anyway, would you? No, we would never do that. But all I'm saying is actually pretty healthy. There's a lot of iron in it, and it's a way that you can get a treat without ruining your sugar intake. Okay, so that's something I sometimes have as well. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Those are some of my biggest emergency foods that I have on hand. So one way to decrease and control your sugar intake is to be making your own food, bulk making your own food, getting used to bringing your food with you and having things like this on hand. Okay? All right. So we talked about, stopping the dairy and starting to, use other forms. I really, really, really recommend that. I mean, it's kind of outside of the scope of a sugar program, but I will say that milk has sugar in it. Lactose is a form of sugar. Remember, it has that OSE at the end. 1 cup of milk has 12 grams of sugar. And quite often, the lower the percentage of fat in it, the more sugar it has. So, even though you're thinking you're not getting sugar in milk, you really are. That's the biggest thing, okay? So think about it, or at least consider not having so much in your diet. All right, eating out and travel solutions. This is something we talk a lot about in the actual detox, but I'm gonna give you some highlights now. If you know me, you know I travel a lot, and I might be prone to eating out from time to time, and I still am able to keep the majority of my lifestyle in check. This is how I do it. Again, it's all about planning. So if I am traveling, which I just went to Paris the other day, I leave my house with a ridiculous amount of food. So I will take Ziploc bag. I mean, normally I use glass, but I'm traveling, so I take massive amount of Ziplocs. I cut up an entire cucumber and 4 carrots, and I take 6 peppers, and I take, as much food as I can. Here's the thing I realized. You're gonna eat more than you realize when you're traveling. And then there's all sorts of levels of travel. If you're flying, you can take food with you. I don't know where people get that idea that you can't. You just can't take liquids with you. You can take liquids, but it has to be under 100 grams or 100 fluid ounces. So just sort of assume that you can't take it with you, but you can take a little bit of salad dressing if you've made, certainly I would recommend you make your own. But you can definitely travel with food. So think about some of these things. These are some of the things that actually come with me. Oh, here's a good one. Dry roasted coconut chips, sea salt and pepper. This is something that I just tried the other day. A 1/4 cup has 1 gram of sugar. So, would I eat like 4 cups of this? No, but if I'm looking for a few things to take with me, then this would be one of the things that I might actually take. So I take a plethora of vegetables with me. I usually take a chicken breast or 2 and then start cutting it up, and I'll put that in a container and take it with me. just pure protein in a lot of cases is just enough to satisfy you in every way. And obviously having a healthy fat and having a good source of protein and having a really nice complex carbohydrate like a vegetable is something that's going to satisfy you longer. So that's a big thing. I will oftentimes take a salad and I will cube whatever form of protein, whether it's hard-boiled eggs or whatnot, with me, and then I take them on the plane. So it's really not that hard. And if you take lots of extras and maybe you have a few things like this in your bag, you know, there's the traveling, there's the trip while you're actually in the air, and then there's, you know, on your way to the hotel and everything else where you might need something to satisfy you. And, you know, just getting in late and not having the proper supplies is something that is oftentimes the time when you start reaching for the things that you really don't want to consume. The other thing is, if I'm going on a trip, I leave things at my house. So unless I'm going for an extraordinarily long period of time, having eggs, having maybe some Ezekiel bread, which is a higher protein, zero sugar bread in my freezer, you know, coming home and being able to make a frittata, you know, things like yams and onions and garlic and those kinds of things, they keep. So you can keep some of those things in your house over a longer period of time. And when you get home, you know, maybe you have something already put in the freezer that you can pull out, or you can whip together something quickly like that. So I will always try and think about what I'm taking with me and what I'm going to return to. If I'm only going away for the weekend or I'm going away for 4 days, vegetables, a lot of them anyways, are going to keep. So sort of preparing a bit is a really big thing. Eating out, well, here's a couple things. There's a lot more information that I can really give in this webinar, but I will say, when you're eating out, if you stick to grilled or baked and you're having an animal protein source and you're having, you know, or some sort of protein, and you're having grilled vegetables or steamed vegetables or whatever, sauteed vegetables even, no big deal, right? It's when you get into sauces and creams and breads and pastas, that's when you're typically going to get a lot more sugar content than you're unaware of. And don't always look at salads as always being the healthiest. If you have a salad and it's full of fruit and it's full of cranberries and it's, you know, got a whole bunch of dressing in it that you don't even really know what's in it, and typically is going to have a lot of sugar, then sometimes what's happening is you're getting a lot more sugar content, what you perceive as something healthy, versus sticking to something that can be only minorly modified. The other thing is, if you're traveling someplace, you can call ahead. I mean, if you're going to an event and it's at a restaurant, look online, get a sense of what's on the menu. You can ask for modifications. Look at what else is on the menu. If you see that there's a food item or a side element over here that you would rather have with your meal, ask to substitute it in and out, for sure. That's what I do all the time. The other thing is, if you're going to an event, you can always call ahead and say, you know, I have a food sensitivity. Can you give me an indication, or can you give me an idea of what you'll be serving this evening? And lots of times they're happy to make the modification for you, especially if it's at a seminar or a wedding or whatnot. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, you're being a total pain in the butt. Well, I don't know. Are you really? I think that it feels crappy to feel crappy, doesn't it? And I just think making some planning ahead modifications before you get someplace can make a big, big difference in how you're feeling and how you're functioning. The other thing is, you know, you're going to indulge. You're definitely going to have times where you know, take the piece of cake, or you know, have the alcoholic beverage that has more sugar and things like that. But isn't it all about the give and take of it all? So where you can control your sugar intake, control your sugar intake. If you know you're going somewhere where it's probably going to be really difficult, then eat really clean leading up to that point in your day, or having a snack before you arrive so you're not famished when you walk in the door and you like hover over, you know, the appetizer plate. Or be the one that brings the appetizer plate. Why don't you be the one that brings the healthy appetizer, you know, the chicken skewers, or, you know, the big vegetable plate or whatnot. You be that person. All right, somebody just asked me, Tanya just asked me about the Ezekiel bread. So in our sugar detox, I'm just going to give you the bad news right now. I'm going to recommend that you don't have a lot of bread products for various reasons. But Ezekiel bread, this one is by a company called Food for Life, is one that I make an exception to. I don't consume a lot of it, but my kids consume it a little bit. It tastes really good toasted. It is a sprouted bread, which means that it behaves a little bit differently in the body. I do try to avoid gluten, but I will tell you that a lot of the gluten-free breads on the market are really made from like millet and rice and potato starches, and frankly, that's kind of crappy in and of itself. And so I'm not a big proponent of them. I think they're pretty nutrient void and they're highly processed. So something like this, one piece has 0 sugar, 3 grams of fiber, but more importantly, 4 grams of protein. So a lot of times these sprouted wheat breads will act more like a protein than a carbohydrate in the body, and a lot of people tend to tolerate them well. So does that answer your question? Let me just see. All right, okay, moving on. Breakfast. Breakfast is a major unintentional fail for a lot of people. And don't worry, I'm going to try and wrap this up pretty soon. Let me give you an idea. All right, so a typical North American breakfast could be a glass of unsweetened orange juice, 2 pieces of whole wheat toast with peanut butter and jam, 12 ounces of coffee with some milk in it. That, 2 pieces of toast with peanut butter, jam, orange juice, and coffee with milk, 63 grams of sugar. That's almost 16 teaspoons. If you were to be the mom who tries, or the dad who buys the healthier type of cereal, and you take 1.5 cups of Shreddies, you put it with a cup of 2% milk, maybe you put a medium banana on it, and you have a cup of unsweetened orange juice. So Shreddies with banana and milk and a cup of orange juice, 65 grams of sugar. How many are we going for a day? 40 to 50, right? That's 16 teaspoons right there. What if you're like the smart person and now you're like, oh no, I don't eat like that. I'm gonna have some 6 ounces, which is like nothing, of low-fat yogurt, half a cup of blueberries on top, and some low-fat granola, like Bob's Red Mill. And you're gonna have a 12-ounce coffee with a tad bit of milk. That's 48 grams of sugar. So you've got your low-fat yogurt, you've got your low-fat granola, and then you have a little bit of fruit on it with your cup of coffee. And by the way, black coffee doesn't have any sugar. 48 grams of sugar, that's 12 teaspoons. But what about this one? What if you were to have 2 poached eggs, you have 2 pieces of bacon, half an avocado, and half of a beefsteak tomato. 2 poached eggs, 2 pieces of bacon, tomato and avocado, and you had it again, like all the rest, with your coffee and milk, you'd be having 5.9 grams of sugar. Not 65, but 5.9. That's 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. So I'm gonna recommend to most people that they start to reframe how they think about what they eat in the morning. So a lot of us are still thinking of fat and those kinds of things as being really negative. Remember that a lot of that is just old conditioning and improper information that was released by the sugar industry to get the whole thing off of the sugar and onto the fat. And the reality is, if you get your eggs from pasture-raised chickens and they are fed omega-3s, and you'll see that on the container, and you properly source your bacon, I'm not saying you have to eat bacon, but I'm just saying, we're all like, oh no, bacon. But if you properly source your bacon, I get mine from Beretta, and you have tomatoes and you have your avocado. People are concerned about the fat in avocado. Believe me, your brain will do the happy dance if you have avocado. You're only getting 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, and that's really different than having 16 teaspoons of sugar, which a lot of people have. All right, so just something to be aware of, just to reframe that in your mind so that you know. Okay, so if you want more information about cutting grains, there's one book that I'm going to recommend. Poise your pen. It's called Grain Brain by Dr. David Perlmutter. It talks a lot about the sugar, carb, and wheat problem that's associated with grains. So I highly recommend that you take a look at that. If you were averse to eggs, morning protein. Okay, well, here's the other thing, Kevin, is I would say think a little bit more about reframing what you eat for breakfast. So I have a girlfriend who will, make a hash in the morning with onions and garlic and chopped up little bits of sweet potato and so on. She loves making that. She'll put it over a bed of greens, or she'll actually have protein from the dinner before. So I know a lot of us think about, what are we going to eat for breakfast? And we sort of have these breakfast ideas, but there's nothing saying that we can't have foods that we eat for lunch for breakfast, if you know what I mean. Sauteing up a big bed of kale in olive oil or ghee, which is also very healthy for you. It's a clarified type of butter, another really super healthy fat in your diet. So if you were to saute up a bunch of greens, which frankly takes about 3 minutes, and you were to have some roasted vegetables from the night before, that would be super satisfying for a lot of people. The other thing that you could also have, Kevin, is you could have a smoothie for breakfast. So use a protein source in your smoothie, such as collagen protein. I use Genuine Health fermented greens, which are really, really nice and clean form of protein. Or you could use nut butter. That's also another thing. You could put hemp seeds in there. That's another form of protein. So that's another option for you if you don't want to have that. All right. Artificial sugars. I feel the need to talk about this a little bit. Dare I ask how much sugar is in a double cream only Tim's coffee? I don't know, Mickey. I really don't. One is I'm such a coffee snob. I don't like Tim's coffee. Double. What is it? Like 2, 3, 4 teaspoons of sugar? I don't know. I bet you could Google that. It's probably not what you want to hear, right? Okay, artificial sugars. I have to tell you as a chiropractor, just know, all right? Whether you're talking about, saccharin, sucralose, aspartame, Splenda, I don't even know all the words anymore. In a word, neurotoxic. Really super, super bad for your body. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. It's a chemical. It's not grown in the ground. It's created in a lab, and it was approved for levels that are far below what we're actually consuming. And it not only makes you hungry and it gets you to actually crave other foods, but it's super, super toxic. I will recommend something. So we talked about, honey and maple syrup and medjool dates and all those, and they have quite a bit of actual sugar in them. If you want to try something, I would say try stevia. Stevia is not a sugar. It's actually an herb. It's 200 times sweeter than sugar. It comes in powder format and it comes in liquid. It's fine for you. There's no issue with it at all, and it has no sugar in it. The only thing about it that I find is it has a tiny bit of an odd aftertaste. Some people don't dislike it at all. That's one thing. Erythritol and xylitol, you'll also see those are sugar alcohols. There isn't anything in the literature that says that they're unhealthy. There's no studies that have shown they're super unhealthy. They definitely wreak havoc on some people's digestive process. So if you have a sensitive digestive system, I wouldn't turn to those types of sugars at all. I would say once you start to decrease your sugar intake and you break the addiction, which it takes some time to do that, once you do that, you become really sensitive to sugar. I eat something now and I'm like, oh, so sugary. That's what will happen with you. So at first you start thinking about what can I substitute all the time? And then once you realize and you start to break that addiction, you will stop feeling that way and thinking that way because your brain is no longer hardwired for that sugar that you used to have in your diet all the time. Okay, so that's the first thing. What can you drink besides water? Think about kombucha. Kombucha has the healthy benefit, quite possibly, if you're getting the right one with the probiotic. You can have tea and coffee. Tea and coffee don't have any sugar in it. I know I'll get in trouble for saying you can have coffee. Coffee's fine. It's the milk and the sugar and all those things that you put in it becomes an issue. If you know what bulletproofing your coffee is or high octane, things like that, again, we can't talk too much about that right now. I'm going to tell you, great. You can do juicing. Vegetable juicing, 100%, not a big issue. Be careful with fruit juicing. If you are going to make a fresh fruit juice, of course, there are many positives in terms of the alkalizing effect of especially vegetable juice. A lot of times we put a fair bit of fruit juice in it because sometimes it's not that palatable to have a lot of, kale and cucumber and things like that. But if you start to add in too much fruit juice, of course, then you're going to start to increase your fructose content. But definitely vegetable juice. Unsweetened non-dairy is another one. All sorts of elixirs and things, a lot of things that you can get into like that. But just, keeping it on the simple side, doing infused waters every day, really increasing your water intake will go a long way for you. And of course, you can always have cold herbal teas and so on. You can have black teas as well. All right. Those are my top tips. Let me just look around here. I know you need to go to bed. It's 9 o'clock, and so do I. Okay. So we talked about the dairy. I just saw these over here, so I thought I would say it. Yogurt is a huge one. And I touched on the fact that yogurt, when you're having the yogurt and you're making kind of the parfait in the morning, is a big deal. So this one's really great from the perspective that it's made with grass-fed milk, which is, you know, cows are supposed to have grass. They're not supposed to have grains. And when you eat the flesh of a cow, which I don't mean to be gross, but when you eat cow meat, or you have the milk from cows who eat grass, it is going to have a more beneficial, positive effect on your human body than if you eat and drink milk from cows that are consuming grain. It will have much higher levels of inflammation and so on. So you look at this and you go, oh, that's kind of great. Here's this made with grass-fed milk. It's 2%, so it's kind of low fat because that's the thinking that we have. But when you look at, this is vanilla, when you look at this, one serving size, which is frankly not very much, has 25 grams of sugar. So this is an option for you. This is Yoso, and it's made from almond and cashews, and it is non-dairy. And this serving size of 110 grams, which is similar, has 1 gram of protein, or sorry, 1 gram of sugar in it. Now, not all of the ones by Yoso have 1 gram, but I'm saying this one does. So if you are a yogurt fiend and you just can't do without it, here's an option for you, okay? So that's the only thing that's here that I didn't get to discuss. So wrapping this up, here's what I'll tell you. If you focus on eating whole foods, if you focus on having a little bit more control over what you're making and you are bulk creating your foods, thinking ahead, multiple meals, meal planning, having a much more abundance of green vegetables and even some starchy vegetables, some yams and root vegetables. If you're focusing on consuming healthy fats like ghee, which is the clarified butter I was talking about, coconut oil, even grass-fed butter, if you're having avocado oil and you're having avocados and you're really increasing the healthy amount of fats in your diet, you'll notice you're far more satisfied. If you start to decrease your sugar as you go through, you will stop jonesing for it. You will see the difference. I want to tell you it's doable. It really is. And the difference that you're going to feel, the results that I got from people doing the sugar detox before was astronomical. People coming off medications, huge changes in their lipid profiles, and then their blood results, and just how they felt, how they healed, weight loss, hormones coming into balance, sleeping better, digestion coming around and functioning much, much better, and so on. It is a swap in the biggest way to clean eating. That is the big thing. The detox is a number of things. It is 40 days, not because it takes 40 days to fully drop a sugar addiction. It takes 40 days to create a new habit. And so the intention of this is not to just detoxify your addiction to sugar, even if you think you don't have one, but it's also to create a lifestyle. So this is something that you can continue to do for the rest of your life, but it's also not about being perfect. So I get people who are nervous and scared and all those kinds of things about doing the program. And I want to tell you, I understand. I don't want you to be perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. I'm not perfect. It's about learning new habits, trying things on. You know, families converted. There were people who were worried that their husband weren't on board, or there was men that were worried their wife wasn't on board. People were worried about their children. You know, people will eat food when you put it before them and they start to see the difference. But ultimately, you're just responsible for yourself. So you can't make other people do this. But once you start adopting this lifestyle and this is how you're eating and people start to see the difference, they're going to want on board as well. So let me just give you a really quick rendition of what the detox is. It's 40 days. It starts October 19. There are 40 days of recipes and meal plans, all sorts of tips. There's weekly, twice weekly webinars, sorry, not webinars, emails that go out with video tips. There are 5 live webinars with special guests and myself throughout the whole program. And there's also a private Facebook page where we connect together with other participants as well as with each other, myself and the other guest experts that are on. You're going to get printed and you're going to get digital copies of everything that we do, and you're going to get the support. if you need additional support, or if you're one of those people that you just feel you have a particular specific situation that you think you want more ongoing private consultation, I'm available for that for reduced rate and so on. So this whole program is $169 as for the early bird rate, and that's going to be up till October 1st. It goes up to $199. It starts October 19th. All the information is at fosterchiropractic.com/sugardetox. I hope you'll join us. I notice there's a lot of people that have re-signed up for the program, not because they didn't learn anything the first time, but they really recognize that they made a lot of changes and they want to leverage their health to the next level. So if you have any questions, I definitely encourage you to give me an email, dr.foster@rogers.com. You can send me a message on Facebook. You can post it on the side and I will stay in the chat room for a few minutes. The payback is tenfold. This is something that I know is doable, and with the right support, it's something that you can have a huge improvement in your health. So that's it, 9/11, I'm gonna get off now. I thank you so much. If there's any other questions, oh, somebody answered the Tim Horton question. So thank you. All right, have a great night, and I will see many of you on October 19th. Thank you.